Joining now is the host of the Michael Savage podcast and the author of Our Fight for America, The War Continues, Dr. Michael Savage. Welcome to the show. So many people wondering what President Trump is going to say. I do want to ask you not what he is going to say, but what you think he should say.
Thanks, Robin Lindsay. I cannot predict what I think he should say or what he is going to say. But I will go back in time. In 2016, shortly after he won the election, surprisingly, by the way, I had him on my radio show at that time, and I asked him pointedly, and it caught him by surprise. I said, would you consider meeting President Putin before you're inaugurated? And he stopped for a minute, and he said, not only would I meet him before after I'm inaugurated, I'd be glad to meet him before. We did not have war for these years. We had peace because Donald Trump's a businessman. He's a man of peace. He spoke to Putin, and that's what's missing here. The Biden administration demonized Putin for the last year that he's been in office. Hillary Clinton called Putin Hitler before Trump was elected. They've had it in for Putin for years. Now, look, I'm not justifying Putin's invasion at all. I want to be very clear about that. He's a tyrant and he's a dictator. Yeah. However, had Trump been president, I don't believe this would have happened. I believe Trump would have maintained a communication with Putin and would have negotiated some type of deal prior to this horrendous loss of life that we are all seeing. So I would just say that I think that if Trump is president again, which I hope will happen, should we survive 3 more years of this incompetency, I think we'll have a much more peaceful world. And I think that the war against the war machine must be remembered for what it is. Robin Lindsay, you have a government, you have a, military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about, that we all know about. They're salivating. They just sent $250 million worth of equipment to Ukraine. That's after dumping $75 billion worth of equipment in the deserts of Afghanistan. Where are we getting the money from?
Dr. Savage, let me interject. I'm just curious. So what we're seeing play out right now, Vladimir Putin, he's a senior partner in all these relationships. Joe Biden's the swampiest of swamp creatures. He got elected in 1972. But Vladimir Putin has been president or prime minister for the last 20 years. He's the senior partner in that dynamic. We have not seen this Vladimir Putin, though. Has something changed? He's 69. A lot of this has got to be about legacy, but is something else going on with the psychology of Vladimir Putin?
I don't know what's in the man's mind, but I do know this. Wars are often fought over money, natural resources, not just ego, not just pride, not just territory. People don't know this, that the nation of Ukraine rates first in Europe in proven recoverable uranium ores, 10th in the world's stores of titanium. I have a whole list. I'm not going to read it to you. This is a phenomenally rich, arable land. It was known as the breadbasket of Russia. But more than that, iron, mercury, shale gas, total value of natural resources, phenomenal, 4th in the world. So there's natural resources, and wars have been fought over things as simple as salt in history, salt. So I think that Putin is pushed to a wall here, and I think he's fighting not only for his legacy in his own mind, to restore Russia's grand days, if you want to put it that way, but I think in plain English, it's about money, ammonia production, natural gas production, installed capacity of nuclear power plants. There's a lot of money involved, and people are forgetting this. It's not just about the ego of Putin versus the ego of the comedian Zelensky, who everyone suddenly loves right now.
Yeah, he's become an international hero all of a sudden. This guy who kind of came out of obscurity, an actor, he was a comedian as well. Not the case today.
No, okay, I understand it, but you know that at a certain point you have to say to yourself, what's best for my people? Do I want more bloodshed? Or can I negotiate with Putin and maybe step down? Even Napoleon abdicated when he had to. This guy is an egomaniac and frankly is out of control. Again, I don't want to be put in the position of seeming as though I'm a shill for Putin or apologizing for Putin. The opposite is true. He's a dictator. He's a terrorist in many ways. We know that. But on the other hand, he's a superpower. Ukraine is not a superpower. If we don't stop this through negotiation, which is something Trump could have done, we're liable to see this escalate, which it already is. And I'm terrified this could escalate like World War I did. I've said this for 4 weeks.
Well, we hope that that does not happen, Dr. Savage. I know many people are concerned about where this may escalate. Yeah. I pray that these tougher sanctions will do something. We always appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.